The security alert vibrated against my hip, but it was the thumbnail preview that stole my breath. Unfamiliar balloons floated across my kitchen ceiling, drifting lazily as if mocking me. I expanded the notification with shaking fingers, and the sound flooded through my phone's speaker: laughter, clinking glasses, and my brother's unmistakable voice declaring a toast to new beginnings in our perfect home. I froze, my pulse hammering in my throat. The camera feed showed what should have been impossible. My brother Owen stood in my living room, champagne flute raised high, surrounded by nodding relatives and cheering children. They ran wild across the hardwood floors I had paid to have refinished just last week. My sister-in-law Heather perched on my kitchen island, her manicured fingers dangling a wine glass like she belonged there, like this was hers. But it wasn't. This was my home. A home no one even knew I had purchased. A home no one had keys to except me. A home I had worked myself raw for 5 years of overtime, selling my car, canceling vacations, taking on consulting work on weekends. Every sacrifice condensed into the deed tucked safely in my glove compartment. And yet here they were. I pressed my back against the office wall and slid to the floor, the world narrowing to the screen in my hand. My brother's voice carried through the speaker, smooth and smug. "We deserve this upgrade. After years of struggling while others had it easy." Others had it easy. The words sliced through me. I had worked 70-hour weeks while Owen bounced between jobs, complained about bad luck, and borrowed money he never returned. I had clipped coupons while he dined out. I had saved every penny while he bought gadgets he couldn't afford. And yet our parents always praised his ambition while treating my stable career as something dull, something less impressive. Now he was standing in my house holding a glass of champagne, pretending it was his. My finger hovered over the emergency contacts. But instead of calling my parents, instead of begging for help, instead of screaming at him through the cameras, I dialed the police. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. "This is Rachel Bennett. I own a home on Willowbrook Lane. There are people inside who shouldn't be there. Do you know these individuals?" the dispatcher asked. I stared at my brother's smug smile on the screen, at the way Heather leaned into the camera as though posing for a picture in her own kitchen. "Unfortunately," I said, tasting bitterness in my mouth, "I know them very well." The drive to the house took 19 minutes. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my hands throbbed. Every mile brought back memories of Owen's entitlement, how he once borrowed my car for weeks, how he used my credit card for a purchase I never saw repaid, how he told everyone at Thanksgiving that Rachel's good with numbers, as if my career were a trivial hobby. By the time I pulled up across the street, police cruisers were already in the driveway, their flashing lights painting my pristine white exterior in alternating red and blue. Through my phone I watched the scramble inside. Heather stuffed wine glasses into cupboards. Children were ushered upstairs. Owen smoothed his shirt and pasted on that same practiced smile he had worn since childhood when caught taking something that wasn't his. The officer at the door asked who owned the property. Owen, with a lift of his chin, said, "This is our new family home. We just closed on it." The lie slid off his tongue so easily it nearly sounded true. Almost. I stepped out of my car, the folder of documents clutched to my chest, the mortgage approval with only my name, the transfer receipts, the crisp deed signed just 3 days ago. The night air carried the scent of the lake as my heels crunched over the gravel driveway. Owen's face changed the second he saw me. Surprise, irritation, then something darker flickered in his eyes before he composed himself. "Rachel," he said, forcing a laugh, "what are you doing here?" I handed the officer the folder. "This is my house. I closed on it 3 days ago. They broke in." The officer scanned the paperwork and nodded. "These documents confirm Miss Bennett as the legal owner. Sir, unless you can provide proof of ownership, you'll need to leave immediately." Heather appeared in the doorway, her voice sharp. "This is ridiculous, Owen. Tell them." Owen's charm began to fray. "There must be some mistake. Our parents helped us with this purchase. Rachel must be confused." "The documents are quite clear," the officer replied. He looked at me. "Ma'am, would you like us to issue a trespass warning?" I looked past Owen into the house I had sacrificed everything for. Balloons reading "New Home" brushed against the ceiling. A banner hung across the fireplace. "Congratulations, Farrell family." My family name, but not their home. "Yes," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "and I want it documented." Owen's mask slipped. His eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. Family sticks together. Exactly, I replied coldly. So why are you in my house? The officers moved in. The party disintegrated into chaos. Children cried. Heather cursed relatives shuffled out with embarrassed faces. Owen never looked away from me, his glare promising that this was only the beginning. When the last of them was gone and the police had filed their report, I stood alone in the kitchen. Dirty glasses littered the counter. Cake crumbs scattered across the island. A child's drawing was taped to the refrigerator, a house with 4 stick figures labeled "Our New Home." I ripped it down, my hands trembling, not from fear but from clarity. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about every moment Owen had stolen from me, every achievement diminished, every sacrifice dismissed. This home was my line in the sand, and this time I would not let anyone cross it. The backlash began before sunrise. My phone buzzed with messages as I stood on the back deck watching mist rise over the lake. Mom, what have you done? Your brother is devastated. Dad, call us immediately. This family situation needs to be resolved. Aunt Vivian, shame on you for embarrassing Owen like this. Cousin Mark, not cool making a scene with the cops. Owen said you've gone off the deep end. The narrative was already being rewritten with me cast as the villain. A familiar role. But this time I had proof. I ignored their voices, forwarded the security footage and police report to my lawyer, and opened every window in the house. The night air swept through, carrying out the last traces of their trespass. This was my home, and I would fight for it. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew their voices wouldn't stop until I faced them directly. Every missed call and scolding text carried the same undertone: I was the problem, not Owen. It had always been that way. Their house looked the same as it had for 30 years. Peeling paint, the oak tree leaning over the front yard, the porch swing where Owen used to sit, and charm neighbors with his easy smile. I stood there for a long moment, clutching the keys to my new home in my pocket before walking up the steps. My mother flung the door open before I could knock. "Rachel, thank God," she exclaimed, pulling me inside. Relief flickered across her face as though she had rescued me from a terrible mistake. But the warmth ended there. "How could you call the police on your brother?" she demanded, her hands flying in agitation. "In front of the entire family. Do you know how humiliated he is?" I laughed bitterly. Humiliated. "He threw a party in my house, Mom. He told everyone it was his. He hung a banner across my fireplace." "He didn't mean it like that," she snapped. "You should have come to us first. We could have handled it quietly." Handled it. My voice trembled with fury. By letting him squat there until he convinced everyone it was his. By writing me out of my own story the way you always do. My father entered from the kitchen, mug of coffee in hand. His voice was calm, measured, as though reason could disguise bias. "Rachel, your brother has been under a lot of pressure. He's trying to support his family. You live alone. You can't possibly need that big house." The words punched the air out of me. Can't possibly need it. I worked for that house. Every overtime shift, every dollar saved. You know how long I sacrificed for it. My father sighed. "Sometimes sacrifices are made for the family. You've always been good at taking care of yourself. Owen isn't." There it was. The unspoken rule that had governed my life since childhood. I was capable, therefore I was expected to carry the weight. Owen was fragile, therefore he was excused. I steadied myself, drawing on the steel I had discovered last night. This time I'm not carrying him. The house is mine. The police have documented it. If Owen tries again, I'll press charges. My mother's eyes widened in disbelief, as though I had just renounced my bloodline. "You'd put your own brother in jail, if that's what it takes to protect what's mine," I said coldly. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. For once, neither of them had a rebuttal. My mother wrung her hands. My father's jaw tightened, but neither apologized. Neither admitted I was right. I turned and left their silence echoing louder than words ever could. Back at my house, I walked through each room, slowly grounding myself in the proof of what I had earned. The wide windows I had chosen for their view of the lake. The kitchen island I had designed for Sunday brunches I hoped to host. The study where I imagined writing late into the night. This was mine, but the invasion had left its mark. I could still see Owen's champagne glass on the counter, Heather's lipstick smudged on a napkin, a toy car wedged into the corner of the living room. Ghosts of their presence haunted the walls. So I set to work. I scrubbed, repainted, rearranged. I lit candles in every room, letting the scent of lavender erase the staleness they had left behind. By nightfall, the house felt new again, mine again. Yet even as I worked, the messages from family kept coming. My phone buzzed with cousins urging me to make peace, an aunt warning me that Owen is heartbroken, even a family friend suggesting I be more generous since you have so much already. Each message was a reminder they didn't see me. They never had. To them, I was the stable one, the reliable one, the one who could be leaned on endlessly without breaking. But I was breaking, and I refused to pretend otherwise any longer. A week later, Owen confronted me directly. He showed up in my driveway, his car blocking mine, his face red with indignation. "You think you're better than me now, don't you?" he spat. "Because you bought this place, because you called the cops on your own brother." I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, my phone already recording in my pocket. "I don't think I'm better, Owen. I just know this house is mine. You tried to steal it. You lied to everyone." He barked a laugh. "Steal it? Mom and Dad promised me they'd help with a house. They never said it would be yours. And did they sign the deed? Did they make the payments? Did they bleed for every dollar like I did?" My voice rose, trembling with rage. "Or did you just assume, like always, that what's mine should also be yours?" His smirk faltered. "You're pathetic," he muttered, "choosing a building over your own family." "No," I said, my voice steady now. "I'm choosing myself over being your doormat." He stared at me, stunned by the defiance he wasn't used to hearing. Then he spat on the ground, turned, and drove away. I stood there long after the sound of his engine faded, my chest heaving. For the first time, I felt something shift inside me, power, boundaries, a refusal to be erased. But Owen wasn't finished. The following Sunday, I went to my parents for dinner, hoping naively that time might have softened them. Instead, I walked into a wall of hostility. Every chair around the table was filled with relatives who looked at me as though I were a stranger. Whispers buzzed like flies. My mother placed a plate in front of me, her voice brittle. "We're worried about you, Rachel. This obsession with the house, it's tearing the family apart." I looked around the table, at cousins who had borrowed money from me without thanks, at an uncle who had praised Owen's resilience while dismissing my accomplishments as luck, at relatives who had cheered at his fake new home party. "You're wrong," I said softly, my eyes burning. "It's not the house tearing us apart. It's your refusal to hold Owen accountable. It's your choice to see me as selfish when all I ever did was carry the weight for everyone else." The silence was suffocating. My mother's lips trembled, but no words came. My father looked away. I set my fork down, my hands trembling but firm. "If protecting what's mine makes me the villain in your story, so be it. But I won't apologize for it." Then I stood, walked out of that dining room, and knew in my bones that nothing between us would ever be the same again. The silence after that dinner was deafening. My phone didn't buzz with messages for days, not from my parents, not from cousins, not even from Owen. For the first time in my life, I was cut out of the constant chatter of family politics, and though it hurt, it was also liberating. But the quiet was short-lived. A week later, I was sitting in my office when my coworker slid her phone across my desk. "Rachel, isn't this your brother?" On the screen was a social media post, Owen standing proudly in front of my house, arms spread wide. The caption read, "New beginnings for the Farrell family. Thank you to Mom and Dad for making our dream possible." The comments below were filled with congratulations, praise for his perseverance, even admiration for my parents' generosity. Dozens of relatives liked and shared it, celebrating his supposed triumph. My stomach dropped. It wasn't enough that he had tried to claim my house, now he was rewriting history for everyone to see. That night, I sat at my kitchen island, staring at the glowing screen, scrolling through the comments until my vision blurred with tears. I could see the narrative forming already: Owen, the resilient younger brother, finally achieving stability. Rachel, the selfish older sister, clinging to something she didn't need. I knew if I didn't act, his version would become the truth. So I took screenshots of everything: his post, the comments, the photos of him on my porch. I sent them to my lawyer, attaching the deed, the police report, and the timeline. Her reply was swift: "He's opening himself up to a defamation case as well as further evidence of trespassing. We'll act." But legal battles take time. And in the meantime, the emotional war continued. Aunt Vivian called, her voice sharp. Rachel, why are you trying to embarrass Owen online? Everyone's talking about it. Just let him have this. Let him have this, I snapped. It's mine. My house, my sacrifice. You don't understand, she sighed. Family isn't about possessions, it's about unity. Then why does unity always mean me giving everything up? I whispered. She didn't answer. The next blow came at work. I overheard two colleagues whispering in the break room. Did you see Rachel's brother? Finally turned his life around. Makes you wonder why she never helps him out more. The humiliation was suffocating. My private sacrifice had become public gossip twisted into a story where I was the villain. I went home that night and sat in the dark, hands trembling, anger rising like fire in my chest. They wanted me silent. They wanted me erased, but I refused. So I began telling my story. I met with a journalist friend from college, someone who had always respected my determination. I laid out the evidence, the deed, the police report, the screenshots of Owen's lies. She listened, eyes wide, and said, Rachel, if you want this published, people will finally hear your side. But are you ready for what it might unleash? I was. The article went live the following week. Woman fights to protect home after brother's attempted takeover. It didn't use our real names, but the details were undeniable to anyone who knew us. It painted the picture clearly: years of sacrifice, betrayal by family, a brother twisting the truth for sympathy. The backlash was immediate. Messages poured in from strangers, women who had experienced similar betrayals. You're brave. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for speaking up. But my family's response was brutal. My mother called, her voice shaking with fury. How could you drag us through the mud like this? Owen is devastated. You've humiliated us all. No, I said firmly. I told the truth. You're just angry the truth doesn't make you look good. She hung up on me. Owen, however, didn't stay silent. He stormed up to my house days later, pounding on the door until my neighbors came outside. His face was red, his voice carrying across the quiet street. You think you've won? He screamed. You think anyone believes you? You'll regret this, Rachel. I'll make sure you do. I stood at the window, phone in hand, recording every word. I didn't open the door. I didn't give him the satisfaction. When the police arrived, called by concerned neighbors, Owen tried to spin the story again, claiming he was just visiting his sister to make peace. But the video in my hand told the truth. They issued another trespass warning, sharper this time. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, adrenaline coursing through me. The fear was real, but so was the clarity. I couldn't rely on family to protect me. I could only rely on myself. Still, the ache lingered. Every holiday invitation dried up. Cousins posted photos of gatherings I was excluded from. My parents stopped answering my calls entirely. I had been erased just as I always feared, but not because I was weak. Because I had finally chosen myself. And yet, even in the loneliness, I felt something growing. Strength, resolve. The unshakable knowledge that I had drawn a line and refused to cross back over it. I started filling my home with pieces of me. Paintings I had admired but never bought. Shelves of books I finally had time to read. A garden blooming in the backyard, every flower a reminder that beauty can grow even after ruin. One evening, as I watered the roses, my neighbor walked over. An older woman named Helen, quiet but observant. She smiled softly. I read that article, she said. I know it was about you, and I just want to say I'm proud of you. Most people would have folded under that kind of pressure. Her words cracked something open in me. For so long I had been desperate for my family's approval, their recognition. And here was a stranger offering the validation they never had. I thanked her, my voice breaking, tears spilling down my face. That night, I realized something vital: family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who see you, who stand beside you, who remind you that you're not invisible. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. The following weeks carried a heaviness, the kind that sinks into your bones. My parents still hadn't spoken to me. Owen's posts online grew more erratic, and the silence from my extended family was a wound that throbbed every time I opened social media. But beneath that ache, I felt something steadier than I ever had before: conviction. Then one night, I received an envelope shoved under my front door. No postage, no return address, just my name scrawled in Owen's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, my hands trembling. Inside were copies of old financial records, loans, transfers, signatures. At first, I didn't understand, but as I sifted through the papers, a horrifying picture emerged. For years, my parents had been funneling money into Owen's accounts. Money they told me they didn't have when I asked for help with school, when I begged for support to get started in life. There were documents showing they had co-signed loans for him, bailed him out of debts, even taken out a second mortgage to cover one of his failed business ventures. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, the papers spread around me like pieces of a puzzle that revealed a truth I had long suspected, but never dared face. My family had always chosen him, not just in words, not just in praise, but in tangible sacrifices I never received. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Owen had done in my house. Because this wasn't just his greed, it was my parents' complicity. Their investments in him came at the expense of me. Every time they told me to be independent, every time they praised my resilience, it was because they had nothing left to give. I was never their priority. The next day I confronted them. I drove to their house, clutching the envelope, my stomach in knots. My father answered the door, his expression hard. My mother hovered behind him, wringing her hands. "Where did you get those?" my father demanded as I spread the papers across their dining table. "Owen dropped them off," I replied coldly. "I think he wanted to hurt me, but all he did was show me the truth." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Rachel, you don't understand, he needed us." "And I didn't." My voice cracked, fury and grief tangled together. "Do you remember when I asked for help with my tuition and you said there was nothing you could do? Do you remember when I worked 2 jobs and still couldn't afford a car while Owen drove one you bought for him? Do you remember telling me to be proud of your independence while you quietly mortgaged this house to cover his gambling debts?" Their silence was confirmation enough. "You never invested in me," I whispered, my hands shaking. "You only ever invested in him. And now you wonder why I won't give up my house. It's the only thing I've ever had that was truly mine." My father's jaw tightened. "Owen is fragile. He needed us more." I felt something inside me splinter, sharp and irrevocable. "No," I said softly. "He needed consequences. And you robbed him of them. You robbed me too." I gathered the papers, my vision blurred with tears, and walked out. My mother called after me, but her voice was thin, desperate, too late. Back home, I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing until my chest ached. The house around me stood tall, silent, a witness to the unraveling of my illusions. My family had never been mine to lean on. I had always been on my own. But as the hours passed, my tears hardened into resolve. If they had always chosen Owen, then I would choose myself, fully, unapologetically. And so when Owen returned days later, banging on my door, shouting accusations, I didn't cower. I stepped outside, holding my phone high, recording. "You think you're smarter than me?" he spat. "You think you can take everything I deserve? Mom and Dad gave me that money because they love me more, and you'll never change that." His words, meant to wound, only clarified the truth. He admitted it freely, the entitlement etched into every syllable. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "That's all I needed to hear." His face twisted, confusion flashing across his anger. "What? You just admitted everything I said," tapping my phone. "The favoritism, the money, the lies. And now if you ever try to step into my home again, this recording goes to every person who still believes your stories." He faltered, his rage collapsing into something smaller, fear. For once, I saw him without the shield of our parents' protection. Just a man stripped bare, clutching at power that was no longer his. He muttered something incoherent and stormed off. I watched him go, my chest heaving but my spirit unbroken. That night, I sat on my porch staring at the stars reflected in the lake. The air was cool, the silence heavy, but inside me was a strange kind of peace. I had confronted the truth, ugly and painful as it was. I had faced Owen without flinching, but the journey wasn't over. Because healing isn't just about standing against those who hurt you. It's about finding what comes after. So I began to rebuild, not just my house, not just my reputation, but myself. I started journaling every morning, pouring my pain onto paper. I joined a local community group, surrounding myself with people who valued me not for what I could give, but for who I was. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, listening to stories of betrayal and resilience, realizing I was not alone. Each step was small, but together they became a staircase out of the darkness. And slowly my house transformed from a battleground into a sanctuary. The walls no longer echoed with Owen's voice. The rooms no longer carried the ghosts of my family's betrayal. They carried me, my laughter, my music, my quiet mornings, my hope. Still, the wounds lingered. I often wondered if my parents ever regretted their choices, if they ever lay awake at night realizing what they had lost. Did they ever think about the daughter they had cast aside? Or did they cling to Owen even as he dragged them down? I would probably never know. But maybe that was okay. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their love. I was choosing myself. And that choice, painful, lonely, liberating, was the truest revenge of all. Spring arrived, and with it a quiet rebirth I hadn't expected. The lake thawed, the trees budded with pale green, and sunlight streamed through my wide windows in a way that made every room feel like a promise. I had lived in my house for months now, and each day it became less a fortress against betrayal and more a home. My home built not only with money, but with every ounce of grit it took to stand against my family. Yet even as life began to feel lighter, the scars remained. Some evenings, I'd sit on the porch and watch the rippling water, remembering the girl I used to be, the daughter desperate for approval, the sister who quietly sacrificed so Owen could shine, the woman who nearly lost herself when her own family tried to erase her. That girl still lived inside me, but she was no longer steering my life. The neighborhood slowly became my new family. Helen, my elderly neighbor, brought me tea and stories about her late husband. A young couple down the road invited me to backyard barbecues. Slowly, laughter filled the rooms that had once echoed with Owen's lies. For the first time, I realized that love and belonging didn't have to come from blood. They could be chosen, found, nurtured. Still, Owen lingered like a storm cloud in the distance. I heard rumors, debts piling up, friendships dissolving, jobs slipping through his fingers. My parents clung to him tighter than ever, funneling what little they had left into his endless hunger. And though I knew it wasn't my responsibility, part of me grieved. Not for him, but for the truth my family would never change. They had chosen him over and over until there was nothing left to give. One evening I received a message from my mother. Just a single line: "We miss you. Please come to dinner." I sat staring at the screen for a long time. My heart ached with longing. I wanted so badly to believe those words. But I also knew better. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me who bent, who gave, who carried burdens that weren't hers. So I didn't reply. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, stepped onto my balcony, and whispered to the night, "I miss me too." And I finally found her. In the months that followed, I began sharing my story more openly. What started as journaling became blog posts. What began as quiet conversations became speaking at local groups. Women reached out to me telling me of brothers who stole inheritances, sisters who sabotaged marriages, parents who chose favorites so blatantly it broke them. My pain was mirrored in theirs, and in that reflection I found purpose. I told them the truth, that standing up for yourself isn't glamorous. It's lonely. It's terrifying. It's nights of questioning whether you're the villain because everyone says you are. But it's also salvation. It's the moment you hear your own voice rise steady and clear against the storm. It's the day you walk through the door of your own house and know without a doubt that you are home. That was my revenge. Not destroying Owen, not exposing my parents, not fighting them at every turn. My revenge was surviving, my revenge was thriving, my revenge was joy they could never touch. I often thought back to the moment in the police station when the officer asked if I wanted the trespass documented. How small my voice felt when I said yes, and how monumental that yes became. Because it wasn't just about the house, it was about choosing for the first time to stand for myself. And from that single choice, everything else unfolded. One warm summer night, I hosted a dinner at my home. Friends gathered around my table, candles flickered against the polished wood, and laughter carried out into the garden. I paused in the doorway, looking at the scene before me, and tears filled my eyes. This was what I had fought for. Not just walls and windows, but a place filled with people who saw me, valued me, loved me. As I raised a glass in a quiet toast, I whispered to myself, "You made it, Rachel. You're home." The journey hadn't been easy. The betrayal hadn't vanished. The wound still twinged some nights when the silence grew heavy. But I was no longer defined by what my family took from me. I was defined by what I rebuilt after they left me standing in ruins. And that, in the end, is the lesson I carry. Sometimes the family you're born into will abandon you. Sometimes the people you love will choose lies over truth, favoritism over fairness, betrayal over loyalty. But betrayal doesn't get the final word unless you let it. You always have a choice. I chose myself. And if you're listening to my story now, maybe it's time you chose yourself too. Because home isn't just a place. It's the life you claim, the boundaries you draw, the love you allow in after you've shut the door on those who would take it all away. If my story touched you, if it made you think of your own strength or reminded you that you deserve better, I hope you'll stay with me here. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of resilience, betrayal, and transformation. And tell me in the comments, what has betrayal taught you about yourself? Because at the end of the day, betrayal doesn't break us, it remakes us.